Both change and staying the same come with discomfort. Choose the one that leads to growth. This is a truth many people never stop to really consider. They think discomfort is a sign that something is wrong, a signal to turn back, to retreat into what feels familiar and safe. But the reality is, discomfort is not the enemy. It's the evidence that something is shifting. It's the sign that you're stepping into territory you haven't mastered yet. It's the growing pain of becoming someone you have not been before. If you look closely, you'll see that both paths, change and staying the same, carry their own weight, their own cost, and their own pain. The difference is that one pain produces a better version of you, and the other simply keeps you trapped in the version you already are. Think about any time in your life when you've truly grown. It probably wasn't in the moments when everything was easy. Growth rarely happens in the soft cushions of comfort. It happens when you're stretched, when you're pushed, when you feel like you're not quite ready, but you take the step anyway. Change demands that you leave behind the security of the known and walk into the unknown, and that will always stir a level of discomfort. But on the other hand, staying the same, refusing to change, requires you to live with the gnawing feeling that you could be more, do more, achieve more, but aren't. That's not a pain that goes away quickly. That's the kind of discomfort that settles deep into your soul. It's easy to imagine that staying where you are is easier, but that's a half-truth. In the short term, it may feel easier to do nothing. It may feel easier to put off that conversation, skip that workout, avoid that new skill, stay in that job you dislike, or ignore the financial discipline you know you need. In the moment, you escape the immediate challenge. You dodge the sweat, the strain, the awkwardness of learning, but what you trade for that momentary relief is a lifetime of subtle frustration. You wake up day after day knowing you're capable of more but unwilling to pay the price of change. That's its own kind of discomfort, only quieter and far more dangerous because you can get used to it. The discomfort of change is like the pain of exercising muscles you haven't used in years. At first, it's sharp and obvious. You feel every step, every movement, every stretch. But over time, your body adapts. You become stronger, more capable, more flexible. That early discomfort becomes the doorway to strength. Staying the same, on the other hand, is like sitting still for too long. It doesn't hurt at first. In fact, it might even feel nice. But eventually, you become stiff, weak, and sluggish. The longer you stay there, the harder it is to get up and move. That's the hidden cost of choosing the discomfort of staying the same over the discomfort of change. Most people never weigh these two types of discomfort against each other. They only feel the intensity of the immediate challenge in front of them. They look at the pain of waking up earlier, the confusion of learning something new, the vulnerability of asking for help, and they decide it's too much. They don't realize that by avoiding that short-term pain, they're committing to a much longer, duller ache that will follow them for years. The discomfort of change might last for days, weeks, maybe months, but the discomfort of staying the same can last a lifetime. When you begin to see this clearly, your perspective shifts. You no longer ask, "How do I avoid discomfort?" You start asking, "Which discomfort is worth it?" You begin to understand that there is no path without challenge. Even the path of least resistance has its own resistance. It just shows up later and in a different form. You can struggle now to build the life you want, or you can struggle later with the regret of not building it. Both require energy, both require patience, and both will test you. The difference is in the outcome. Consider someone who decides to get healthy. They know it will mean early mornings, sore muscles, changing their diet, learning new routines, saying no to certain pleasures. That's uncomfortable, but if they choose to avoid that discomfort, they face a different one: low energy, health issues, reduced mobility, and perhaps the quiet disappointment of knowing they didn't take care of themselves when they had the chance. Neither path is free from discomfort. The only real choice is whether you'll endure the pain that leads to strength or the pain that leads to decline. This principle shows up in every area of life. If you choose to change your finances by saving more, budgeting carefully, investing wisely, you will feel the discomfort of discipline, of saying no to impulsive purchases, of learning how money works. If you choose not to, you'll face the discomfort of financial stress, limited options, and dependence on others. If you choose to improve your relationships, you will face the discomfort of honest conversations, vulnerability, forgiveness, and patience. If you choose not to, you'll face the discomfort of misunderstandings, distance, and the slow erosion of connection. The pattern is always the same: discomfort now or discomfort later. Here's what's important to understand. The discomfort of change has an expiration date. It is a season. Once you adapt, once you grow, once you get stronger, that specific discomfort fades. What was once difficult becomes part of your normal life. You might even look back and wonder why you ever thought it was so hard. The discomfort of staying the same, however, has no natural end. It can stretch on for years, becoming so familiar that you stop noticing it, even as it quietly robs you of joy, opportunity, and fulfillment. The people who live the richest, most meaningful lives are not the ones who never feel discomfort. They are the ones who choose the right kind of discomfort. They are willing to feel awkward, to struggle, to make mistakes, to feel out of place if it means they're moving toward a better version of themselves. They understand that there's a price to pay either way, and they'd rather invest their discomfort into something that will grow rather than something that will decay. Choosing the discomfort of change over the discomfort of staying the same is not about being fearless, it's about being willing. Willing to take the step even when you feel uncertain. Willing to risk short-term unease for long-term benefit. Willing to be uncomfortable for the sake of something better. And when you consistently choose that, you begin to see that discomfort isn't something to avoid, it's something to direct, to channel, to use as the fuel that moves you forward. Short-term discomfort is the price for long-term freedom. Many people misunderstand this and spend their entire lives trying to avoid anything that feels uncomfortable in the moment, without realizing that they are building a future full of limitations by doing so. Every meaningful goal requires you to pay an upfront cost, and that cost almost always shows up as some form of temporary struggle. Whether it's the sweat of hard work, the humility of starting as a beginner, or the discipline to resist easy temptations, there's always a price tag attached to success. If you aren't willing to pay in discomfort now, you will almost certainly pay in regret later. The choice is never between pain and no pain. It's between the pain that ends and rewards you, and the pain that lingers and restricts you. Imagine someone who wants to build financial independence. At first, it may feel overwhelming to track every expense, create a budget, skip unnecessary purchases, and learn about investing. There's a mental strain in saying no to what everyone else is saying yes to. There's the frustration of learning a skill that doesn't produce instant results. That's short-term discomfort, but with time the savings grow, the investments multiply, and the person gains the freedom to make choices without being chained to a paycheck. That's the long-term freedom they bought with their temporary sacrifice. Now compare that to the person who avoids that initial discomfort. They spend freely, ignore budgeting, and push financial learning aside because it's boring or hard. At first, life feels easier. No tough decisions, no need to plan ahead. But as time passes, they feel the weight of debt, the stress of living paycheck to paycheck, and the frustration of missed opportunities. The freedom they could have had slips further away with every passing year. The same principle applies to health. The discomfort of change might be waking up earlier to exercise, choosing the salad instead of the burger, or resisting the urge to skip a workout because you're tired. These moments don't feel pleasant, and they demand consistency before results become visible. But over time, those small choices compound into stronger muscles, more energy, and better overall health. That's the freedom to live life without being held back physically. In contrast, the person who avoids that short-term effort gains comfort in the present, but slowly loses mobility, stamina, and vitality. They trade temporary ease for long-term limitation. It also applies to skill development. Learning something new, whether it's a language, a profession, or a creative craft, is often uncomfortable in the beginning. You make mistakes, you feel clumsy, you doubt yourself, and you compare your early attempts to people who have mastered it. This discomfort is a natural part of growth, and it's temporary. Push through it, and one day you'll have a valuable skill that opens doors, creates opportunities, and gives you choices that others don't have. That's long-term freedom. But if you avoid that awkward beginner stage, you remain stuck with your current limitations, relying on others for what you could have done yourself, and missing out on possibilities because you weren't willing to endure the short-term struggle. Short-term discomfort is like a down payment. You don't get the house the moment you pay. It takes time before you can move in, but that payment secures your future benefits. Similarly, the price you pay in temporary challenge secures the rewards that come later. The problem is, many people want the house without the down payment. They want the reward without the work. They want freedom without first paying the cost that freedom demands. Life doesn't work that way. It gives you the bill first, and only after you pay does it hand you the reward. The temptation to avoid short-term discomfort is strong because it's immediate and tangible. You can feel it now. Whether it's physical strain, mental effort, or emotional vulnerability, the present pain feels heavy. Long-term freedom, on the other hand, is abstract in the moment. It's a promise of what might come if you keep going. This is why discipline matters. It's the bridge between the pain you feel now and the freedom you'll enjoy later. Without it, you will almost always choose the relief of the present over the rewards of the future. One reason people resist paying this price is that the benefits of freedom aren't visible at first. You can't see the muscles you'll build after one workout. You can't see the wealth you'll accumulate after one day of saving. You can't see the mastery you'll develop after one lesson. The discomfort is real and immediate. The reward is invisible and delayed. That gap between cost and benefit is where most people quit. But if you can accept that this gap is part of the process, you can keep moving forward until the freedom begins to appear. Consider relationships. If you want deep, meaningful connections, you'll face the discomfort of vulnerability, honesty, forgiveness, and patience. You'll have to face misunderstandings and work through them instead of avoiding them. This is not easy, and in the moment it may feel easier to walk away or keep things shallow. But those who endure the temporary discomfort of building trust gain the long-term freedom of knowing they are surrounded by relationships that can weather storms. Those who avoid it may enjoy less friction in the short term, but end up with shallow connections that crumble when tested. The essence of this principle is trade-offs. You can't have comfort now and freedom later in the same area of life. If you keep choosing what's easiest today, you almost guarantee that tomorrow will be harder. If you choose what's harder today, you almost guarantee that tomorrow will be easier. This is true in business, education, health, finances, and personal growth. Every field rewards those who are willing to pay upfront in effort, patience, and resilience. Short-term discomfort often feels bigger than it really is because it sits directly in front of you. It's like looking at a small object held right up to your eyes. It blocks your view of everything else. But if you step back and look at it in the context of your whole life, you realize how small it is compared to the years of freedom it can unlock. 1 month of discipline, 1 year of focused effort, 1 season of sacrifice. These are small prices to pay when you consider the decades of freedom they can produce. The paradox is that when you accept short-term discomfort as the price of long-term freedom, it starts to lose its sting. You stop seeing it as suffering, and start seeing it as investment. You approach the workout, the study session, the difficult conversation not with dread, but with the understanding that each one moves you closer to the life you want. Instead of feeling trapped by the effort, you feel empowered by the progress. Avoiding change trades temporary effort for permanent limitation. This is one of those truths that sounds simple, but carries enormous weight once you see how it plays out in real life. Every time you back away from a challenge, every time you delay a necessary step forward because it feels too uncomfortable or too uncertain, you make a trade. You give up the brief discomfort of action for the ongoing burden of restriction. You choose to keep your life smaller than it could be because you don't want to feel awkward, stretched, or challenged in the moment. That trade might feel harmless when you make it, but over time it compounds into a life where opportunities are fewer, options are narrower, and your sense of possibility is diminished. Change often looks intimidating from a distance. It demands learning something new, unlearning something old, or letting go of habits and patterns that feel safe. There's effort involved, physical, mental, emotional, and that effort can be uncomfortable. So the temptation is to sidestep it. You tell yourself you'll start later, when you're more ready. You convince yourself that the change isn't urgent, that things are fine as they are. But in reality, what you're doing is accepting the limits that come with your current situation. And those limits aren't static. They grow tighter the longer you avoid change. Consider someone who is in a job they don't enjoy. They know they need new skills to move up or move on, but learning those skills would require night classes, extra reading, maybe a few months of awkward trial and error. It would mean less leisure time and more mental strain. That's temporary effort, but avoiding it keeps them exactly where they are, year after year, watching others advance while they remain in the same role. The effort they avoided could have been finished in months. The limitation they accepted lasts for decades. The same principle applies to health. Maybe you've built habits over time that aren't serving you: poor eating, no exercise, inconsistent sleep. Changing them will feel unnatural at first. Your body will resist the new routines. You'll crave the old comforts. That's the temporary effort required to turn things around. But avoiding that effort means your health will continue to decline. Over time, your energy will drop, your body will ache more, your risk of illness will rise. These are not temporary conditions. They become part of your daily life. What once could have been addressed with a few months of disciplined effort becomes a permanent limitation that shapes everything you do. Relationships follow the same pattern. Sometimes change is needed to repair a connection, an honest conversation, an apology, a willingness to see things differently. These moments are uncomfortable, and it's tempting to skip them. You avoid the awkwardness, the vulnerability, the possibility of being misunderstood. That's avoiding temporary effort, but by not taking that step, you allow the distance to grow. Over time, the relationship becomes weaker, colder, more fragile. The limitation is now permanent because the bridge that could have been repaired is left broken. Avoiding change often feels safe because you're holding onto what's familiar, but safety is not the same as freedom. Safety in this sense can be a cage you lock yourself into. You can tell yourself that nothing is wrong, that you're comfortable where you are, but deep down you know there are things you're not experiencing, opportunities you're not taking, and strengths you're not using. The limitations of the cage become so normal that you stop questioning them, and before long, you can't even imagine what life outside of it might feel like. What makes this trade even more dangerous is how invisible it can be in the moment. When you avoid change, nothing explodes, nothing collapses immediately. You just stay where you are. Days turn into weeks, weeks into years, and the limitation becomes part of your identity. You tell yourself stories about why things are the way they are, that you're just not the type to do certain things, that it's too late to start, that the opportunity has passed. But the truth is, the opportunity didn't pass on its own. You traded it away to avoid the temporary effort it required. Sometimes the effort required for change is small, but we exaggerate it in our minds. We imagine it will be harder than it really is, so we don't start. Or we start and give up the moment it feels difficult. This is why so many people live far below their potential. It's not that they can't change, it's that they decide the effort isn't worth it. They forget that the effort is short term, and the limitation they're accepting could shape the rest of their lives. Think about the skill of public speaking. Many people fear it because the effort to improve requires vulnerability, practice, and facing moments of embarrassment. That's temporary effort. But avoiding it limits your career opportunities, your ability to influence others, and your confidence in high-stakes situations. You can avoid the red face, the shaky hands, the awkward pauses. But in doing so, you also avoid the growth and the freedom that comes with mastering the skill. You've traded minutes of discomfort for years of limitation. Financial habits tell the same story. Learning to budget, save, and invest can feel tedious at first. It takes mental effort to track your spending, to research options, to resist impulse purchases. But that's a season, not a lifetime. Avoiding it, however, traps you in a cycle of financial instability, where every unexpected expense becomes a crisis and long-term goals feel impossible. You live with that limitation every day, not just in the moments when money is tight, but in the constant background stress it creates. In every area of life, the temporary effort required for change is like climbing a hill. The climb may leave you breathless, your legs aching, your pace slower than you'd like, but at the top of that hill, the view opens up and the ground levels out. The limitation you had before is gone. If you refuse to climb, the hill never disappears. It just stands there, blocking what's on the other side. And every time you look at it, you're reminded of the choice you didn't make. Avoiding change doesn't keep life the same. It quietly makes it smaller. The opportunities you pass on today aren't always there tomorrow. Skills you don't build now may take twice as long to learn later. Habits you don't change early become harder to break as the years pass. The window for certain experiences closes, and the longer you wait, the fewer doors remain open. This is how permanent limitations form, not through dramatic events, but through countless small moments of avoidance. The irony is that the temporary effort you're avoiding often shrinks once you begin. The fear, the resistance, the imagined difficulty, it all starts to fade when you take the first steps. But as long as you hesitate, the effort remains in your mind as something bigger than it really is. You carry the weight of it without ever setting it down by actually doing the work. And while you carry that imagined weight, your life stays inside the same narrow boundaries. The pain of progress fades, the pain of regret lingers. In the moment, progress often doesn't feel rewarding. It feels like strain, effort, repetition, and sometimes even failure. You push yourself beyond what you thought you could do, and it burns. You make mistakes that frustrate you. You practice over and over without seeing immediate results. This is the pain that comes with moving forward. It's rarely glamorous, and it's almost never instant. But something interesting happens over time. Your body, your mind, your spirit adapt. What felt heavy starts to feel lighter. What felt confusing starts to feel clear. The pain that was sharp in the moment begins to fade, replaced by the satisfaction of knowing you're better than you were before. Progress always demands payment in the currency of discomfort. Whether it's the ache in your muscles after training, the mental fatigue after learning, or the emotional vulnerability after difficult conversations, there's always a price. But that price doesn't stay the same. You can remember the first day of a workout program, when you could barely make it through, and months later, the same exercises feel easy. You can remember the early days of learning a skill, when you fumbled with every attempt, and now you perform it without thinking. The difficulty becomes part of your history, not your daily experience. That's the fading of the pain of progress. Regret works in the opposite way. It doesn't fade on its own. It grows. It lingers because it's tied to something you didn't do, a chance you didn't take, a moment you let pass. At first, you might not think much of it. You tell yourself there will be another opportunity. You convince yourself that it wasn't the right time. But as time passes, you can't help but think back to how different things might be if you had acted. Unlike the pain of progress, which diminishes as you move forward, the pain of regret deepens as you look backward. The sting of a missed opportunity can resurface years later. You can find yourself thinking about the business you didn't start, the skill you didn't learn, the relationship you didn't repair, the trip you didn't take. These memories don't get lighter, they get heavier, because you can't go back and change them. The window closed, and now the choice you made not to act is permanent. That permanence is what makes the pain of regret so much harder to live with than the pain of progress. The pain of progress has a purpose. It's moving you towards something better. Every drop of sweat, every late night, every moment of frustration is an investment in a future where that specific pain no longer exists. You're trading short-term discomfort for long-term capability. When you look back on it, the struggle often becomes a source of pride. You remember how hard it was, but you also remember how you pushed through, and that memory strengthens you. The pain of regret has no such reward. There's no growth from what you didn't do, no improvement from the chance you never took. There's only the lingering question of what could have been. Consider someone who decides to run a marathon. In the months leading up to it, their body aches from training, their schedule feels tight, and their mind questions whether they can really do it. But on the day of the race, and especially after crossing the finish line, the physical pain is replaced by accomplishment. They no longer feel the soreness of every training day. They feel the pride of every step they took. Now compare that to someone who always wanted to run but never committed. Every time they hear about a race or see someone else complete one, they feel that pinch of regret. It doesn't fade because they never gave themselves the chance to replace it with progress. The same applies to education. Earning a degree or mastering a subject takes years of study, countless hours of reading, and often the frustration of not understanding something right away. In the middle of it, the workload can feel endless, but once the degree is earned or the skill is mastered, the struggle is over. You're left with the benefit and the opportunities it creates. For the person who avoided that effort, the years pass anyway, but without the achievement. 10 years later, they're still wondering what might have happened if they had started. The regret stays with them because they never replaced it with action. This contrast is why so many people look back on hard seasons of life with gratitude. They remember the pain, but they also remember the growth. The late nights building a business, the sacrifices made to get healthy, the effort to rebuild a relationship. These were all difficult in the moment, but they became part of a larger story of progress. Regret never becomes a part of a better story because it has no resolution. It just sits there, a chapter left unwritten. One of the reasons the pain of progress fades is that human beings are wired to adapt. What once felt unbearable becomes normal when repeated often enough. This is why habits are so powerful. The discipline that once required enormous willpower can eventually become automatic, and when that happens, the pain is gone, but the benefits remain. Regret doesn't work that way. You can't adapt to the absence of something you deeply wanted. It remains a quiet, persistent weight, a reminder of the choice you didn't make. The fading of progress's pain also comes with unexpected rewards. Along the way, you develop skills you didn't anticipate, connections you didn't plan for, and confidence you didn't think you'd gain. These are the byproducts of doing hard things. Regret offers no byproducts. It offers no skill, no connection, no growth. Only the awareness that you could have had those things but chose not to. It's important to remember that the pain of progress is usually temporary because it has a natural endpoint. You train until you're strong enough. You study until you understand. You practice until you improve. You endure until the situation changes. With regret, there's no endpoint unless you actively replace it with action in the present. Left unchecked, it becomes part of your identity, shaping the way you see yourself and the way you make decisions in the future. Even small acts of progress can erase potential regrets. The moment you take action, you begin to change the story from "I never tried" to "I gave it everything I had." That shift is powerful because it changes how you remember the experience. You might still remember the difficulty, but it becomes a badge of honor instead of a source of shame. Without that action, the memory remains empty, a space filled with unanswered questions. This is why the temporary nature of progress's pain is so valuable. It gives you a way to measure your growth, to look back and see how far you've come. You can track the journey from the first step to the point where the struggle no longer exists. With regret, there's nothing to track, only the static image of a path you never took. That image can haunt you for years, and it rarely gets lighter with time. New habits feel awkward at first, but become natural over time. The early stage of building any habit is a strange and often uncomfortable place to be. You're stepping into territory where your mind and body haven't yet formed the rhythm, where every action feels forced, where you're hyper, aware of every little detail. It's like wearing a new pair of shoes. They look fine, they fit well enough, but they haven't yet molded to your stride. You notice every step, every pinch, every slight rub against your skin. The more you wear them, the less you notice, and eventually, they feel like a part of you. Habits work the same way. In the beginning, your brain resists the unfamiliar. It wants to default back to what it knows because the known path requires less energy. The awkwardness is simply the brain's way of saying, "This isn't automatic yet." When you start something new, whether it's waking up earlier, exercising regularly, journaling, reading, meditating, or practicing a skill, there's no momentum yet. You have to create it manually, one choice at a time. This means you're constantly deciding to do the thing, and each decision feels heavier than it will later. You have to think about it, push yourself toward it, and sometimes even argue with yourself about why you should follow through. The mental negotiation is part of the awkward stage. You may feel clumsy while doing it, unsure if you're doing it right, and impatient because the results aren't instant. This is normal. All progress has a beginning that feels unnatural because you're asking yourself to operate in a way you haven't before. There's also a subtle emotional discomfort that comes with new habits. You're giving up something familiar, maybe time spent relaxing, maybe an indulgence you enjoy, maybe just the ease of not thinking about it and replacing it with effort. Even if you know the habit is good for you, a part of you will miss the comfort you left behind. This is why many people quit early. They misinterpret the awkwardness as a sign they're not cut out for it, when in reality, it's simply the transition period. The truth is, no one starts a new habit already comfortable with it. Comfort is earned through repetition, not granted at the beginning. Think of a musician learning an instrument. The first few times they hold it, it feels foreign. Their hands don't seem to know where to go. The sounds they produce are far from smooth, and every movement requires conscious thought. But with each session, the awkwardness begins to fade. Fingers find the right positions without as much thought. The sounds begin to improve, and eventually, muscle memory takes over. The same happens with any habit. At first, you think your way through every step, but repetition shifts the process from conscious effort to automatic action. One of the reasons new habits feel awkward is that they're competing with old ones. Your brain has already built pathways for your current routines, and those pathways are efficient. The moment you try something new, you're essentially carving a fresh path in the mental landscape, which takes energy. This is why the start feels harder than you think it should. You're not just doing the new habit, you're also resisting the pull of the old one. With enough repetition, the new path deepens and the old one begins to fade. The awkwardness is nothing more than the process of rerouting your patterns. Small wins play a big role in moving past the awkward stage. Each time you complete the habit, even if it feels clunky, you prove to yourself that you can do it. These wins are the early building blocks of consistency. At first, the victory might simply be showing up, putting on your workout clothes, opening the book, sitting down to write a few lines. Over time, those wins stack up, and the action stops feeling like a disruption to your day and starts feeling like part of it. You stop asking yourself whether you'll do it today. You just do it. That shift from decision to default is the turning point where a habit begins to feel natural. In the early stages, it's helpful to expect awkwardness instead of being surprised by it. If you anticipate that starting will feel strange, you won't be discouraged when it does. You'll recognize it as a normal phase rather than a sign that you're failing. This mindset makes it easier to keep going long enough for the habit to settle in. It's not about perfection in the early days. It's about repetition. Consistency will smooth out the rough edges. Another thing to remember is that habits don't just become natural because you repeat them. They become natural because you connect them to a bigger purpose. If you know why you're doing something, you're more willing to endure the initial discomfort. Waking up early is easier if you connect it to the goal of having more time for personal growth. Eating healthier is easier if you connect it to the goal of living with more energy and fewer health issues. The why keeps you steady while the how is still awkward. Many people underestimate how quickly awkwardness can fade when they commit fully. What feels unnatural in week 1 can begin to feel normal by week 3. By the 3rd month, it can feel strange not to do it. This is why discipline at the start is so critical. It bridges the gap between the unfamiliar and the automatic. Without that bridge, you're likely to turn back before the habit has a chance to take root. There's also a psychological reward that comes once a habit begins to feel natural. You no longer have to expend as much mental energy deciding or motivating yourself to do it. It becomes a background process, something you do almost without thinking, which frees up your energy for other things. This is one of the great benefits of pushing through the early awkwardness. Once the habit is established, it starts working for you rather than against you. Habits that once felt forced can eventually become part of your identity. At first, you might say, "I'm trying to be someone who reads every day," or "I'm trying to be someone who works out regularly." Later, without even realizing it, you simply think of yourself as a reader or an athlete. The identity shift happens naturally because the habit is no longer an action you're testing. It's a reflection of who you are. That's why the awkward beginning is worth enduring. It's the initiation period for becoming the kind of person you want to be. The transition from awkward to natural doesn't happen in a single leap. It's a gradual shift that comes from small, consistent actions. Some days will feel smoother than others, and there will still be moments when you question whether it's worth it. But the key is to keep showing up long enough for the habit to integrate into your life. The awkwardness will fade, the rhythm will set in, and one day, without even realizing it, you'll be living the habit as effortlessly as breathing. Discomfort is something we all experience, whether we are actively pursuing change or simply standing still. Life offers no escape from it. The difference lies in whether that discomfort moves us forward or keeps us locked in place. Every choice you make today is either moving you toward a better future or cementing you deeper into the life you currently have. The discomfort of progress can be exhausting, demanding effort, courage, and persistence. But the discomfort of staying stuck has its own price. It quietly steals your potential, limits your opportunities, and leaves you wishing for a different outcome that never comes. The truth is, you cannot avoid choosing. You're already choosing by the way you live each day. Your future is shaped not by the comfort you enjoy in the moment, but by the discomfort you're willing to face for something greater. If you're willing to endure the strain of learning something new, of taking risks, of stepping into the unknown, then you're making an investment in the person you're becoming. This type of discomfort is a builder. It strengthens your character, expands your skills, and prepares you for the challenges ahead. On the other hand, avoiding that path might feel easier now, but it silently carves out a road where your options shrink over time. Avoidance feels safe, but safety can become a cage. When you're stuck, you feel it every day. There's a dull ache in knowing you could be more, a quiet frustration in seeing others move forward while you stay in the same place. That discomfort might not be sharp or intense like the discomfort of change, but it's constant. It lingers in your thoughts. It weighs on your decisions. It slowly erodes your sense of possibility. And here's the difference. The discomfort of growth eventually pays off. The discomfort of staying stuck doesn't. It simply remains year after year, becoming a normal part of life until you stop noticing it. Yet deep down, you still feel it. Facing the discomfort of progress is like entering a gym for the first time. At the start, every movement feels foreign. Every weight feels heavy. Every minute feels long. But over time, your body adapts, your muscles strengthen, and what once seemed unbearable becomes manageable. The soreness fades, replaced by the satisfaction of achievement. That's the path of change. It starts hard but becomes easier as you move forward. The discomfort of staying stuck is the opposite. At first, it feels comfortable because you're doing what you've always done. But slowly, the weight of regret builds, the limitations close in, and one day you realize you've been carrying a burden far heavier than the weight of change. Your willingness to choose discomfort for the sake of growth is a clear signal to your future self. It's you saying, "I'm ready to pay now so I can enjoy later." Every meaningful improvement, whether in your career, health, relationships, or mindset, requires some form of present discomfort. It could be the discipline of waking up earlier, the patience of practicing a skill, the humility of admitting you need help, or the courage of starting something you might fail at. These moments are not comfortable, but they are productive discomforts. They are moving you somewhere. In contrast, the discomfort of staying stuck is unproductive. It takes energy but gives nothing back. You spend your days wishing, complaining, and overthinking, but the situation remains the same. The effort you put into avoiding change is often greater than the effort required to pursue it. It's like holding a heavy door closed all day. You think you're protecting yourself, but in reality, you're just wearing yourself out for no reward. Every choice you make today is either a deposit into your future or a withdrawal from it. Choosing the discomfort of growth means you're making deposits. Your skills, your resilience, your opportunities grow over time. Choosing the discomfort of staying stuck means you're making withdrawals. You're slowly spending the energy, time, and possibilities you have without replenishing them. The direction your life takes is determined by these daily choices, whether you make them consciously or let them happen by default. Your future depends entirely on which discomfort you decide to embrace. If you accept the discomfort of stretching yourself, of facing the unknown, of risking failure, then your future expands. If you choose the discomfort of doing nothing, of staying where you are, of avoiding risk, then your future contracts. And the longer you choose the latter, the harder it becomes to switch paths, because the discomfort of change grows heavier with each passing day you delay.